Hello, and welcome to the Neurodiverse Astrologer podcast. I am so excited to have Jaye Anne Beringer with us today. She is an astrology friend, and she has a neurodiverse daughter. And she says that she's had some executive functioning issues, but has found a lot of healing in the work she does. So I'm very excited to talk to her today. So Jaye Anne, tell us a little bit about what you do.
hmm Yeah, I am a medical intuitive. I have a lot of training in the body itself. So you can see my spine here. I went to
Mhm.
chiropractic school and I took an anatomy class where I had to take a human apart, which was very interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I have a very good mental visual of all the structures in the body. So I can see the energetic signatures of those structures. And so I just resolve those things inside the body. And that makes huge changes in so much, whether it's in health, wealth, or relationships. It changes everything because it all comes back to the body, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a massage therapist, so I understand a lot of that.
Yes.
Um, okay.
Yeah, so you know for sure.
Yes. Yeah, I've definitely felt some funky energy in people's bodies and removed some interesting things. Um,
Love it.
but what I really wanted to talk to you about was you mentioned that you had written an article and you were going to send it in to Lifehacker, is that right? On how astrology can be used for like neurodivergent traits to help people cope with them.
Mm,
So I want to talk a
yeah,
little bit about that because
sure.
obviously we're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, so gosh, it was probably 10 years ago. I was pitching Lifehacker because I just found out about astrology and what astrology did for me. I had trouble remembering people's names with their faces. I had trouble I had a big fear of people in general because it felt like everything everyone did was random. And that was my biggest, scariest thing about social anxiety. It's just like people can do anything at any time. Like there's no predictive things. There's billions of kinds of people, and anything can happen. So it was like very scary. Um, but when I learned about astrology, it put it into 12 basic flavors.
Mhm.
And being able to identify people a little bit more clearly within this 12 by 3 grid, right? So you have the houses, you have the signs, and you have the planets or the luminaries. And I could go, okay, so it's sort of like 12, 12, 12, and anyone can have any mix of these things, but at least I can pick out the pieces. Like I can find, I guess, like the downbeat in a musical term. Um, and it was hugely changing for me. And again, I probably am neurodivergent. It just didn't come to the forefront of my mind to be checked for it because I was a normal kid. I was shy.
Mhm.
um but once I started going through my healing process, I didn't have a lot of those issues that I had before. Like I had really bad executive functioning. I did not want to function as an adult. Social anxiety, and then I had mostly because of the um, oh, what's it called when you think everybody's making fun of you? Um,
Are you talking about
Rejection
rejection
sensitivity.
stuff? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is common in with ADHD, but
yeah.
also it can be without ADHD. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, healing fixed all that for me for the most part, and
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of problem talking, but it was the astrology piece that really resolved my social anxiety. And I was like, well, there are other people like me who have social anxiety, but it's really common. Like if you just don't even know, it's really common for people with autism. And so I wanted to write this this article, and they were like, that's too niche, that's really weird, why would you do that? And I was like, well, they'll be sorry because
You'll be
in about 5 years, this is going to be the thing to talk about.
absolutely. It's not too niche because this is exactly my niche. So this is perfect. Okay, so let's you wanted to talk a little bit about your daughter and her chart.
Yes.
So let's if you don't mind pulling that up.
Sure.
I've had a lot of people ask me how you can if you can find neurodiversity in the chart. Um,
Mm,
and I kind of say sometimes. For me, it could be Saturn in the third house. It could be Chiron and Gemini,
yeah.
in the 10th
Well,
house. Or even like a
okay.
sun in the 12th house. I have all three of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. Let's see. So how do I say her name?
Alwyn.
Alwyn. That's
Hmm.
beautiful.
Hmm. So she does have autism, or she's diagnosed just a couple of months ago. So it's very new. But she was speech delayed. She's developmentally delayed.
Okay.
Um, and so one of the things, so I don't know about necessarily finding neurodiversity specifically in a chart, but I could definitely see finding some of the traits, the common traits, and like how to unpack them, how to unwind them. The way I practice astrology is not about like, ooh, that's fun. This is this and that is that. Like the way I practice astrology is okay, cool. How do we work with that in your highest good? And so that you can become yourself entirely, like more and more yourself.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's what I'm looking for is like in her chart. Because it was a struggle. She was 15 months old and she didn't have any words and she didn't care to. She loves the physicality of life and loves running, loves jumping, loves
Mhm.
climbing, loves rolling.
Yeah.
She's very into the water, but was not interesting in talking at all. And for me, I just was found a lot of peace in the fact that she has Mercury retrograde in the 12th house in Aquarius. And it is like she's psychic. Like she is not a verbal kid. It's like going
Right.
to be more tricky for her to learn how to be verbal, learn how to be human. She has this loaded 12th house and
Does.
she's got the sun and rising exact at like 0 degrees Pisces, 1 degrees Pisces.
Okay.
And so to me, it wasn't about whether she's neurodivergent or not. It was more about like how do I support her emotionally and spiritually, because she's not used to being in this body. And I have a feeling, and I don't know if you are of the mindset that we have past lives, but for her specifically, I have a feeling she has many past lives. Most of them were a long time ago, and she remembers all of them.
Wow.
And that is because she knew exactly what yoga poses to do on a yoga mat. I never did yoga in front of her, nothing.
I love that. I love
Right.
that.
She's like, oh, I put like, but the yoga mat was down, and she's like downward facing dog, and then she's doing all this. I'm like, what are you?
What the?
Are we?
Love that. They do. They come with a knowing of things.
Yeah,
I've experienced that with my kids too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so I've been taking it from the perspective of whether it's neurodivergence classically or not, she's got something going on. And so having this support for her spiritually, and she if I'm clearing, she used to get very agitated even if I was just like sitting there silently clearing, and she's get very agitated. And so she's just very in the ethereal world, which Pisces in a loaded 12th house will just do that to you. And that will manifest in the body as like a struggle to connect well with the body because everything is ethereal, and I've just said for a long time, like she's just not interested in speaking as a human yet because she's so psychic.
I
And
love
so,
that. So as soon as she has some words, like she's gonna teach you a lot.
mhm, yes, like those recordings of kids who are like, yeah, this is what the angels told me, blah 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 blah, and love is everywhere and all of that. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So I have one that's nonverbal, and
Mm,
he's a projector in
mm,
the human design. And he was diagnosed at 3, I
yeah,
think, with autism. And I swear, when he looks at me and when he does actually look at me, he is like staring into my soul.
yeah,
Yeah, like
yes,
truly.
yes.
He sees something like some universe inside of me that I don't fully understand. Uh,
Mhm. And
he's
projector, that's that projectoriness. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
That's wild.
So he actually, I'm sorry, he's not nonverbal. That's not true. He does have words. He doesn't have a lot of words, but he has words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and my daughter is also, they're just delayed. They're quite
Mm-hmm.
delayed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is interesting how you just learn how to communicate with them in a different language. And so I was wondering if you'd be interested in, is there anything more that you wanted to share in this chart?
No, we can move on. But
Okay.
those were the biggest things. Yeah. Mercury and
I
the 12th house.
would be very curious to see if you could take a look at my chart and
Sure.
see. I know you've done it before and you gave me a
Yeah.
beautiful reading.
Thank you.
Um, so let me
Let's
just
see
share
if I have. Oh, yeah. Share your screen and then I don't have to find it. Perfect.
my Where is it? Am I sharing it now? Do you see?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay.
No, I don't see it.
Okay. I thought I shared it. Maybe not. Share my screen. There we go. Share.
There we
Okay.
go.
Here we go. Here's me. Because I have looked at my chart and I've said, okay, I see like 5 different things that could possibly explain neurodivergence. And I
Yeah.
think this is a really interesting conversation because I agree with you. You know, sometimes people are just not going to want to label it. That's fine. But it's still important to understand what you're dealing with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
What is your most prominent flavors of neurodivergence? Like where do you see it the most?
um, do you mean I'm autistic and ADHD? Is that what you mean?
Mhm. No, I mean like what are your experiences like? You know, do you
Oh,
have
goodness.
what are the things that kind of piqued people's interest to go, maybe you should get evaluated?
Well, actually, and not a lot of people actually clued me in on it. It was my children. That's actually
Mm.
really common, is when you're getting your children diagnosed, you start looking through evaluations, you start looking through the questions, and you're like, wait a minute, this looks familiar. So I was diagnosed with ADHD first,
Mhm.
and that was about, I want to say 6 years ago, something like that, 7. And then I was just recently diagnosed with autism in January.
Okay.
And that was after I started looking at my daughter. So both my sons
Mm.
are autistic. And then I started seeing some signs in her. And and then when I was looking through, because autism looks really different in women and
Yeah.
girls.
Yeah.
And so that sent me on just like a whole rabbit hole. But as far as like, what do I know? There's a lot of things. Definitely executive functioning for
Yeah.
sure. Info dumping, yes, 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 yes. I mean, is that Virgo or is that, is that
Right. Is that Virgo? Is that neurodivergence? I love
I
it.
don't know. It could be both. This kind of like black and white thinking, like it needs to be a certain way. Virgo,
Hmm.
autism. Who
Right.
knows, right?
Yeah.
But then also just this like time blindness and just wanting to do
Yeah.
my own thing and not stick with a schedule. So I have these conflicting parts of me that wants the routine, wants the schedule. And then there's the other part of me that just wants to be and flow and just do whatever I want to do. And I always
Mm-hmm.
picture kind of my autistic side and my ADHD side, if I were. I kind of see it as my Virgo ascendant and my Pisces Jupiter.
Yeah. Well, and then also having the sun and Virgo in the 12th house has this flavor of that Pisces and Virgo at the same time. So you're like expressing your Virgo nature through this flowiness, which is really confusing,
Yeah,
right? Like it's like this, I'm Virgo. I want everything to be a certain way. And then also I'm going to express it in a really confusing way.
for real. For real. I mean, it was so hidden from me. Both my sun and my moon, um, even my ascendant, I was like, what? Virgo, Cancer? What? It didn't make any sense
Mm,
to me. because I found a lot of safety in my Leo. And I actually think that was the persona I chose, like as an autistic masking
Masking.
female.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the persona I chose because it was really widely accepted. People liked a bubbly, outgoing, expressive, slightly dramatic woman. It made
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
right? Um,
So that was you were expressing through Mercury, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
that's was your
sure. I'm
and it
sure
was
I was.
like close enough to who you really were because it's really close to your sun.
Exactly.
And but it's not Virgo and it's still in the 12th house, which
Yeah.
is gave you the permission to express that flowingness that you wanted to and have it be less staunch. Yeah,
Mhm.
makes sense.
But I also think that this was like, and you can. I'd love your feedback. But I
Sure.
was also kind of looking at that and thinking maybe that's why it was so easy for me to mask. I felt
Yeah.
like people just bought those, bought whatever I presented really
Mm-hmm.
well. And I'm wondering if it's the 12th house kind of stuff going on there.
Gives you a yeah. No, they're really close together, but they're far enough apart that you can be somebody else.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's Mercury, so you're going to communicate through a way that people are like accepting of.
Yeah.
That makes sense too. And again, once again we have Mercury in the 12th house. Like this is interesting to me. And I'm wondering if for some people who are not very good at masking, maybe their Mercury and their Sun are a little farther apart. Like my daughter's, they're in different signs and they're pretty far apart. Um,
Interesting.
but once again, I don't think that we can diagnose autism through a chart. I think that we can find these little things to help you kind of be yourself again,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Instead of masking, right? Or
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's a huge reason I'm doing this podcast
yeah.
is to say, hey, guess what? You don't have to wear the mask anymore. And if you're not even
Mhm.
sure who you are, come read your chart, like learn about your chart because it'll
Yeah.
blow your mind, first of all.
Right.
You'll be like, wait, what? Identity crisis number 100. I don't know. But like this is hugely healing for high masking individuals
Yes.
for
Yeah.
sure. Especially when they've bought into the lie of their mask for so long, like I was just
Hmm.
lying to myself for so long. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that because I've seen many charts that are of neurodivergent people, and I see some patterns, but not a ton. Sometimes I definitely see some things in the third house that makes sense because
Yeah.
of communication,
Yeah. Well,
um,
and you do have,
which I've Saturn.
oh, okay. I was looking at Uranus in the third house, but it's close enough to actually be in the fourth house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to figure that one out too. Is that in the third or the fourth? It just depends on the day, I guess. But
Yeah.
I totally could be that too, right? Like Uranus is gonna mess with some
Be
stuff too.
weird.
It's just gonna be weird. But yeah, I have heard that some people say, well, a Chiron in Gemini would absolutely show some kind of neurodivergence or
So
um,
everyone born from 1985 to 1988 is going to have some sort of neurodivergent traits. Maybe, maybe. I mean,
maybe.
I'm in that camp. You know.
I mean, maybe, that's why it's so on the rise. I have no idea. It would be an interesting
Mm,
study.
that's true.
Um, but I mean, it also can play into thinking about Gemini, like, is it this or this or this or this? I mean, that could play very much into like social anxiety, for instance, or
Mhm.
just the masking and like losing yourself in social situations. I don't know. It's interesting to look at, but I agree with you. But I do wonder if maybe some things going on in the sixth house. Like I see executive functioning in the sixth house. Don't
Yes.
you?
Yes. 100%. Yeah. Virgo in the sixth house, right? Like that's where
Right.
executive function is going to live. And definitely the sixth house. And I personally have a very loaded sixth house, but my sixth house is mostly Cancerian themes.
Hmm.
And so I have Venus in there and like all the flowy ones, Venus, the moon, and Mercury. And so I'm just like, whatever, right? And so that's why I struggled with executive function for a long time.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question, and a lot of people, eventually I'm going to just stop sharing this.
Mhm.
But
What is your relationship to the idea of being famous, right? Because that midheaven is like what you're known for, and having it right next to that Chiron Gemini, and then opposing your Uranus so directly is like, I'm gonna be the biggest weirdo, but I'm gonna hide, but also I'm gonna be really uncomfortable about it, right? Like that is that your experience?
how do you know me? This is why I love astrology. This is why I love astrology so much. It's really interesting that you bring that up because as I am coming more, I'm going to create this podcast. I'm trying to create some more content for my YouTube channel, or yeah, my YouTube channel. Um, Looking to teach more. There's always been that Chiron, I feel like in Gemini has always shown up for like, I don't know enough. Therefore I can't teach until I know it all like perfectly. Could that be Virgo? Could that be Gemini? I
Yeah.
don't know. Um, but I think that I've always wanted to be, I mean, and that Leo, Mercury and Leo, like I want to be seen. I want to express myself. I want people, but at the same time, am I too much or are people gonna like accept me? I mean, I'm a Cancer moon for crying out loud. Like vulnerability and like
Yeah.
putting myself out there. Like I'm gonna come out a little bit and then I'm gonna come back
Mm-hmm.
out,
Mm-hmm.
into my little shell. And even it's funny because I don't know if you noticed, but I have a cradle in
Yeah.
in my chart. And I remember having a conversation with God, and he's like, you have a shell, like you have a literal shell in your chart that you hide in. I was like, that's true. I do.
You do. And you can come out of it, but you can also
So
be safe. Yeah.
So yes, it's I definitely want to make an impact. I definitely want to have influence, and I'm terrified of it. Like every
Yeah.
time I see people get canceled or just horrible like comments and things like that, I'm like, nope, nope, I don't think I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So one of the things that for anyone who's neurodivergent and looking at their chart, one of the most important place to look in your chart is what is in Uranus, what is Uranus doing and what is Aquarius doing, because it's okay to be weird and you want to choose into weirdness, choose into your version of weird.
I like that.
Um,
I like that.
because that masking thing, you're not going to feel settled. You're never going to feel settled if you're not yourself. And
Mhm.
the best way to lean into being yourself is to lean into being weird. Because once you can be weird, then you can be anybody and you can feel just confident, comfortable with who you are instead of trying to be someone you're not.
Yes.
And it's not good for anyone to be someone who they're not, whether you're neurodivergent or not. Everyone is doing it. And also like recognize that too. Like you're not alone. Almost the entire United States population, neurodivergent or not, is pretending to be someone else to be accepted. And leaning into that Uranus, particularly in the house placement, because that's more personalized, leaning into what that Uranus is doing in your chart and saying, okay, this is my weird, and I'm going to lean into my weird, right? Say you have Uranus in the fifth house, for example, you're going to lean into things that are pleasing to you, right? You're going to lean into things that bring you a lot of pleasure, and they're going to feel vulnerable. They're
Mhm.
going to feel very vulnerable because that's what that fifth house is about. And if you want, more, what about the other houses? I don't know that we can go into all of them, but that one just kind of popped into my mind. And for you, right, yours is in the
Third and
fourth,
fourth.
third and fourth. If it's less than 1 degree, then it's in the next house. So I think yours is in the fourth. And so leaning into being a parent has really brought you to life, right?
Oh, absolutely. That I love that. That's a beautiful yeah, explanation of my experience because me understanding the weirdness of my children has helped me embrace the
Yeah.
weirdness of me.
Oh, I
Oh,
just
I
got
almost get
chills.
emotional. There's my Cancer. I almost get emotional with that. It's so true. That's so true. I love that. And
Mm,
in my home and in my family is where I'm doing all my herbal remedies and I'm doing my essential oils and I'm doing all my weird, crystals and stuff. Like I do it at home with my family. So
beautiful. Yes. Yes.
I
And
love
so
that.
you're really coming alive. When I did your reading, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 months ago, you were a different person and you've really like stepped into your own and you've really stepped into your weirdness. And
Ew.
that makes you shine, bright, shiny and bright, right? Like that's how that works
I
when you
love
step into
that.
our weirdness.
Thank you so much. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to say that you are definitely a coach for this. Like you don't hold back, girl.
Oh, thank you. I can't. If I do, then I'm like, well, shoot, I should have said that. That was it's that Chiron and Gemini comes out. I should have said that. I should have said this. I should have said that. I could say so many more things.
Right.
Can't hold back. I can't hold back.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. Yeah, you just say, here I am. Here I am, world, take it or leave it. And it's you're just brave. I love your bravery.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been
Thank
a,
you.
a pleasure to know you. So I'm gonna post links below, but where can people find you?
Yeah, I have a Facebook group called the Last Self-Care Group You'll Ever Need.
I love that.
That's my main form of communication. I pull cards for people live on Tuesdays. And then I have a membership if you wanted to join, if anyone wants to join. It's only $29 a month. And I do some great twice a month healings. So we just worked on the hippocampus, which, oh my gosh, I had to make that a 2-part session because I was like, I think I found the organ of autism. Um, yeah, because that's where we process facial recognition, emotional processing, spatial awareness,
Mhm,
gatekeeping, like what do we even see, like register as what we're even noticing.
mhm,
So it's like a lot of, and then sensory processing is in that too. So, and that just like blew my mind. So if you are a kind of person who gets a lot of sensory overwhelm, that session is like what you need.
okay, we'll post that
um,
below for sure.
yes. Anyways, I wax philosophical a lot. But yeah, so but yeah, I do 2 sessions a month, group work, and then you can have all the past sessions included, which I think there's like 20 of them. So
All right.
yeah.
So just to kind of sum up everything, what is what is the one thing that you would tell someone that just discovered that they're neurodivergent? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Probably if you know yourself, it's not a surprise. And it's more of a shock to get the label rather than to explain what you're experiencing, right? They
Mhm,
call them symptoms, but if you're looking at neurodivergence as not a disease, then you really can't call them symptoms, but what your experiences are.
mhm,
Um, and so what you're really sitting with is a label. And how do you feel about that label? And what does that mean to you? And sit with that because at the end of the day, our the reason we're here is to have an experience. We're not here to be somebody else's, I don't know, version of what they think we should be. We're here to have an experience. We're here to be ourselves and we're here to experience like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And if you're in that, like you are in your zone of genius and keep going with that. Do not stop yourself because somebody, shamed you for it. And the number one thing I would say about this is get rid of all your shame. Just like let it all go. The
mhm.
minute you let go of your shame, you will just feel like yourself again and you will not have to worry about masking anymore.
True.
So, those are my thoughts on that.
I
I
love
have
it.
so many more. I could say
I
so
know.
much
I
stuff
know. I
about
could
this.
just tell we should probably do another episode another time because this was so great and
Yeah.
you're so knowledgeable.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this as well. And yeah, you're loved. Everybody just know that you're loved.
That's it.